Solo Leveling, the show that has taken the world by storm. In fact, the first episode is the most liked episode on Crunchyroll. I'm not making this up, it actually is. The manhwa is known for its jaw-dropping art and large-scale fights. Translating these aspects into an animated form must have been challenging. Let's talk about Solo Leveling. Make sure to subscribe. Before we talk about the episodes, let's go over the staff. Atsushi Kaneko is the animation producer, meaning he is responsible for the logistical aspect and the talent gathering process. Prior to Solo Leveling, he worked on Sword Art Online. He was the animation producer for the Ordinal Scale movie and Alicization, and these two titles are quite relevant. Nearly every episode director and storyboard artist who has worked on Solo Leveling so far also worked on those SAO projects, including series director Shunsuke Nakashige and action director Yoshihiro Kanno. You know who else worked on those shows? Tetsuya Takeuchi and Nozomu Abe. Maybe? Fingers crossed. I'm not too familiar with director Nakashige's catalog, but I do love his work on SAO. Yoshihiro Kanno is the action director and he is insanely good. His contribution to SAO was ridiculous, and more recently, he did God's work on the first core of Bleach TYBW. Having a name like that associated with Solo Leveling is extremely reassuring. Alright, the preamble is over. Let's go through the episodes. Generally speaking, the anime is aesthetically similar to the manhwa, minus those red noses. The anime follows the design and color philosophies of the source material, which is fine. Don't fix what isn't broken. The first episode opened up with a flashy action scene, which is the best thing they could have done. The scene features a ton of hand-drawn monsters, a recurring theme. Takafumi Tori's sequence was the highlight. His signature energetic animation is pure eye candy. It opens up with a smooth camera pan, followed by a large amount of background animation and competent camera work. Not only does the camera rotate, the perspective changes from a high-angle shot to a low-angle one. The camera work was really good throughout. You can see the sky illustration rotate as this guy comes down, which adds to the motion. We get this cool-looking impact frame sequence near the end, with this guy tearing through them, which is such a fun idea. This sequence, animated by main animator Hirokatsu Maruyama, was another highlight. Incredible storyboards. Incredible indeed. Also, look how complicated this angle is. Not only is her movement difficult to draw, these faces also needed to change perspectives. It's an unorthodox cut in terms of composition, and it was executed really well. The first episode also featured a short sequence animated by action director Yoshihiro Kanno, and you can tell it's him based on the timing and the effect shapes. His animation is very energetic, but not exactly in a Kannada-like manner. They do make excellent use of anticipation, although these cuts rely more on the effects. His effects animation can be somewhat shape-oriented, occasionally having these circular or oval particles. Kanno's effects are really satisfying to look at. The second episode gave us a good look at the statues, and they are 2D. The compositing team added some strong textures to them, which looked decent. This sequence, animated by Fasto, was quite impressive. Any cut that shows the entire body is commendable because the animator needs to keep track of the overall anatomy. The start of this cut makes it look like a regular side profile shot, but it zooms in, changes perspective, and rotates, turning into this low-angle shot which gets the scale across. Also, how do you make this foot feel heavy? By adding a bunch of wind effects, which makes the motion feel large. The second episode also featured Yoshihiro Kanno as an animation director, and his influence is quite apparent. This cut, for example, has that satisfying timing and oval effect shapes I talked about. Also, love the colors. Of course, most of it is blue. That's their color of choice for the dungeon scenes, but the orange flames provide that much needed contrast. I was really surprised by how visceral and graphic this sequence was. They are not pulling any punches, which is great. Of course, not all of it was perfect. This cut, for example, looks quite weak. Sung's arms appear to be stuck in that coat hanger position. The final scene was really cool in concept and solid in execution. This is an ambitious cut with changes in both the perspective and proximity coupled with complex background animation. The start looks a bit janky. Sung isn't exactly in sync with the ground underneath him, but overall this was a solid effort. Also again, how do you make the movement of the statues feel heavy by adding a ton of wind effects? The third episode is quite interesting as well. It opens up with this insane drawing. The uncanny amount of detail on the teeth makes it look more graphic. They reanimated this scene. I just talked about how impressive it was, but they decided to redo it. Fair enough. Storyboard-wise, it's similar, but quicker. The episode was very well directed. They played around with the saturation and depth of field at one point. We get another competently animated low-angle shot, which gets the scale across. And again, 2D monsters. No CGI in sight. Neat effect here. The background appears to be animated, but technically speaking, it's not. Only these dark shapes move. The rest is a single color with textures added on top. This sequence was the highlight. I've talked about it before. First off, we can see Sung's entire body. Secondly, these cuts are long, meaning the animator had to take into account the anatomy, staging, and weight distribution for several seconds at a time. There's no hiding behind close-ups or quick cuts here. Nakagawa had to animate the entire body. Incredibly impressive. They managed to tell a story through the visuals. Sung isn't an experienced fighter, but he can keep up with the goblins. Later on, we see this wolf pounce, and when it does, it jumps around from one side to another, obviously trying to confuse its prey. Incredible attention to detail. The final rotation was really solid as well. It made good use of a 3D background. The fourth episode was really good, although the first half wasn't exactly worth writing home about. Because at the end of the day, this is not a full Sakuga show. Not every fight will be well animated. It will use limited animation, stock backgrounds, and speed lines. This fight did have a few impressive cuts, but overall, it wasn't exactly a Sakuga fest. Some scenes were limited, aka the same few frames were looped over. Again, there's nothing wrong with that. That's just the way anime productions work. I did like the general atmosphere. They created this fantasy-like vibe thanks to the art direction. The second half, however, was amazing. You could tell right off the bat that this fight would look good. The camera work here is really dynamic. The background is obviously 3D. I'm pretty sure this entire fight is storyboarded by Yoshihiro Kanno, and it's brilliant. There's this uncanny smoothness to the snake's movement, which looked great. Also, once again, 2D monsters. The fight was really dynamic, making heavy use of 3D backgrounds and creatively utilizing the entire area. They had so many cool ideas. Sung getting thrown around was really well animated. Unlike that one cut from episode 2, you could see his body ragdolling around and interacting with the ground. So many smooth looking cuts. It's really impressive. Look at the desperation in his body language here. Perfectly done. Of course, it wasn't flawless. One of the biggest issues I had with this fight was how out of place the smoke looked. Look at these clouds and tell me they blend in. The blurring doesn't help either. The comp on the smoke isn't the best. However, the overall compositing was nice. The glow and flares from the sparks provided some much needed contrast to these otherwise blue heavy cuts. The action animation steps up a notch here. And it's not just the action. Look how strong the drawings are. They manage to convey the intensity. Also, notice how the entire body of the snake moves, not just the head. This is one of my favorite cuts from this episode. The camera tracks the back of the snake while the 3D background moves around. The snake itself isn't moving, but we know it's in motion because the background is moving relative to it. Similarly, Sung is moving as well in the opposite direction. Reminds me of Yutaka Nakamura's cut from Frieren. The scene doesn't end there. Sung regains his footing and glides all over the snake. The snappy timing and the wild background animation makes this cut a bit hard to follow, but me thinks it's intentional as it slows down in the next cut. Look how smooth this is. It's animated on ones and the inside of the mouth has a ton of detail. I can't get over how good the drawings are. They look so intense and powerful with these vivid facial expressions. This sequence was animated by Takafumi Tori and it was followed by Yoshihiro Kanno's work. Love the perspective here. Sung's hand is closer to the camera and is therefore larger than anything else on screen. The creature animation was wonderful as well. It went from that creepy, calculated smoothness to this frantic motion. As we near the end, the energy steps up again. How do you make this already intense scene feel even more visceral? By adding these thick lines, which serve as both line work and speed lines. They look so good. All of these elements come together in this cut, with the frantic body language, the thick lines, and the 3D background, creating this insane bit of animation. Wonderful work by Kanno. Later into the episode, we get this 2D golem. Again, they are not using CGI for the monsters. Take that as you will. And that just about does it. Solo Leveling is not a full Sakuga show. It has a few issues here and there. Some of the animation is limited, some of the drawings are weak, but overall, it's a good looking show with some incredible highlights. Really excited for what's to come. That's about it. Did you like this video? Check out this other bit of content on screen if you did. Make sure to like and subscribe, and until next time.